Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. And today's talk, I was going to discuss the new moon or Amavasya that's happening tomorrow, 29th of January, 2025. This talk is from Vedic Astrology or Jyotish perspective, so keep that in mind. Ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. And it seems like the, kind of vibe or message of the moment is the power of silence. So let's take a look at that. Note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. Then you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. If you're new to Vedic astrology, Jyotish are my videos. All of my teaching videos on the subject are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. And wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject if you'd like to learn more. I'm good about organizing my videos into different topic areas, and that's all done through playlists. So if you're looking for different topics like planets or grahas, houses or bhavas, yogas or planetary combinations, or there are other topics, I would check out my different playlists. Also, if you like to learn astrology by studying famous birth charts, this could be famous people, places, moments in time. I have a video titled Birth Chart Archive List 2024, where I list quite a few of the videos that I've analyzed on the channel. I'm going to be updating that soon, next month or two, hopefully, because I tend to analyze a lot of birth charts on this channel. So you can check that out, though, for at least a pretty good running list. Other videos to watch with this one to get more out of this talk, because this is mostly an interpretation talk where I incorporate a lot of different concepts. North, South, and East Indian style charts. I do cover Western style charts in that video as well. Introduction to navigating a birth chart. The Lugna, also known as the Ascendant, Rising Center, First House. Introduction to the constellations or rashis, constellation or rashi categories. Planetary aspects. Natural, benefic, and malefic planets or grahas. Bhavat, bhavam, house of the house concept. Chidra grahas, planets of vulnerability, planetary exaltation, debilitation, or uccha, nicca. Swagrahas, planets of their own sign or star. Planet retrogression or vakri. Nakshatras or lunar mansions. Bunch of yogas, parivartana yoga, exchange of houses, budhaditya yoga, the intelligence combination, pravraja yoga, life focus combination, saraswati yoga, artistic combination, and then solar and lunar yoga. So a lot to learn if you're up for it. Okay, so let's take a look at the chart for this moment in time. This chart is set for 29th of January 2025, and it's set for 7:36 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the time zone I live in. And so to get some context first before we go through house by house. Oh, by the way, this is a North Indian style chart if you're not familiar. So the rising sign, ascendant, first house, lugna, all different names of the same thing. The way to find that is at the top, it's the top diamond in the middle. In this chart, there's a little 10 in the bottom corner. That 10 refers to the 10th zodiac sign of Capricorn or Makara in Sanskrit. So in this chart, we have a Capricorn rising chart or Makara Lugna. Okay. To get to the other houses, you count inclusively from the first house, counterclockwise or up into the back, up to the left. So the second house will be where Saturn is, that little triangle, upside down triangle in the upper left corner. And Saturn is there in its own sign of Aquarius, the 11th zodiac sign. And then you go from there. Okay. Okay, so the day lord and the hour lord, both, the hora lord, are Mercury. Mercury represents things like thoughts, communication, decisions, and Mercury's right at the top there. Um, and Mercury happens to be fairly strong because it has digbal or directional strength. Okay, so and the thing is, Mercury is in a sign or in a nakshatra or lunar mansion called Uttarashada. The lunar mansions or nakshatras, if you're not familiar, are there's 27, 28 of them, depending on what you're counting. Every night the moon passes through a different one. They all have different energies associated with them. And so after the moon passes through 27 nakshatras, you get about a lunar month. Okay. So So Mercury and Uttarashada is symbolized by an elephant's tusk. So there's can be this like piercing victory. Okay. The thing though is that while Mercury is strong because of the directional strength or digbala, it's combust because it's so close to the sun. The sun basically eclipses it with its light, so you can't see Mercury when Mercury's this close to the sun. So what that means for any combust planet or asta planet is that the outer qualities of that planet are not generally seen, like you can't see the planet in the sky. However, the inner qualities are stronger, okay, because the sun is energizing and enlivening and that sort of thing. So this Mercury, while it's strong, you can't necessarily see it. Mercury also symbolizes like the rational mind, intuitive mind, logical mind. So there's some success here. Yeah, that's Uttarashada. But it's more of like an internal success, internal dialogue, potentially. Okay, so we've got a lot of mercurial energy. Mercury can also represent like business potentially, communication, that sort of thing, writing, publishing. Okay, now the Dasha period or planetary period at this time is Moon, Jupiter, Rahu. Okay, now Moon's up at the top as well. Okay, Moon is in a different nakshatra. Moon is in a nakshatra called Shravana. Shravana is symbolized by 3 footprints in the sand. And Shravana is associated with education as well as like storytelling, like oral traditions and that sort of thing. Now, the thing is, it's a new moon, so moon is also close by the sun. And what's interesting is that the moon and the Mercury are both planets symbolizing the mind. The moon represents the intuitive, sensory mind, and Mercury represents the analytical, logical mind. So this is, if this is a person's birth chart, this is somebody who, doesn't really reveal their thoughts very much, but there might be a lot of internal uh, dialogue going on here. Okay, so Moon starts off the Dasha period, and then we have Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is aspecting the first house as well, so we've already got a lot of energy directed towards the first house or lugna, which represents it kind of sets a vibe or energy for the whole chart. But it also represents the physicality of somebody as well as the psychology of somebody. And Jupiter is another planet representing communication, publication, education, like Mercury. Okay, Jupiter is aspecting the first house from the fifth. Jupiter's retrograde, that line under Jupiter means it's retrograde. Excuse me. Jupiter happens to be in a nakshatra called Rohini. Rohini is considered to be the most kind of attractive, seductive, luscious, fertile nakshatras of the bunch of the 27 or 28. And so what I'm saying here is that there's this projection or publication, um, you know, that's very lovely and attractive. Okay, so already we're getting mental energy, a lot of internal thoughts, storytelling, and victory, success in that, and now we're getting the outward projection of it. Because Jupiter, again, you can actually see Jupiter; it's not too close to the sun. And we have more influence on the first house as well. One thing I'll mention is that big green circle at the top. The reason we have that is that when you have 3 or 4 planets, depending on the house, in one house together, that creates what we call pravraja yoga or life focus yoga. Okay, so especially since we have this pravraja in the first house, the focus of this person is themselves. For better or worse. I mean, this could be like somebody who's in the public eye, who maybe likes that sort of attention. It could also be somebody who, or doesn't like that kind of attention. This could also be somebody potentially who's, like narcissistic or something like that. But, again, I'm just saying that when there's a pravraja in the first house, the focus is on self. And it can also be self development. which I think is a good indication in this particular chart, which I'll get into. It'll unfold as we talk more. Okay. So, Moon, Jupiter, then the third planet of the top here is Rahu. Rahu is in the third house of non-oral communication. So things like writing. And the thing is that Rahu is there. Rahu is in a nakshatra called Uttar. This is a nakshatra that's symbolized by the back legs of a funeral pyre. So there can be a lot of like transformation and destruction and that sort of thing. The Uttar comes after Purva Bhadrapada. Purva Bhadrapada is just smoke and flames and destruction. It's also symbolized by the front legs of a funeral pyre. So Purva Bhadrapada is much more destructive. Uttar Bhadrapada is like taking a step back. It's like there's a little bit of distance or objectivity associated with the destruction. And Rahu is also an ambition planet. So there's a lot of ambition here of being objective about transformation. Okay. Now, the thing is that Jupiter is the dispositor or ruling planet for the third house of Pisces, or Meena in Sanskrit. Okay. So we're picking up, even though Jupiter's in the fifth house, we're actually picking up energy of Jupiter in the third house as well through Rahu. The other thing to know is that there's a parivartana or exchange of houses between Venus and Jupiter. So you can kind of swap those two planets in your mind. So that actually brings Jupiter back to its own house, third house, and Venus to the fifth house. Now, Venus is a planet representing arts, creativity. Jupiter represents communication and writing, and Rahu again ambition. So with this going on, I'm seeing somebody who's a prolific writer who's able to turn or take, negative events or losses and shift the perspective on them. Okay. Now, again, this could potentially be, on positive side or negative side, but we already seeing this storytelling, in the first house and this, writing, communication, education. This could be somebody who's like a spin doctor who takes negative events and kind of sugarcoats them potentially. This could also be somebody who um, takes the negative experiences of their life and transforms them into something positive, like almost turning lead into gold. And so, especially with the storytelling element, and we haven't gotten into the sun yet, but the sun is also in Shravana nakshatra. So you have two planets in Shravana, the storytelling. It's the third house being, again, non-oral communication. This is somebody who I think could be like a writer, journalist, also potentially a lyricist or a songwriter. And the reason why I'm saying songwriter is because the ascendant is in Dhanishta nakshatra. Dhanishta is symbolized by a drum, and there's a lot of like, and so drums, like they usually keep rhythm for different songs and dance and stuff like that. So what I'm seeing here is that there's somebody who is really interested in the rhythm of words and ideas and publishing them. Yeah, writing about them specifically. So, yeah, this could be a songwriter, was a lot of what I was picking up. Could also be a journalist, potentially, somebody who's writing a lot. But the thing is, we've got the moon and the lugna, we've got Venus and the third house. So those two planets represent a lot of emotion. Okay. So this is somebody I think who's writing, and then what is it? Capricorn is a movable earth sign, so very practical, a lot of practical action. And Pisces in the third house is a dual water sign, a lot of emotion, like churning through emotion. So it seems like what this person is able to do is take negative events and spin them. And again, spinning could be kind of have a negative connotation, especially when it comes to politics. And there could be some indication of that here. But it could also be a positive thing, like, artists who take their negative experiences and then draw or write or that sort of thing. Okay, so that's I think what we're seeing here. So when I see Moon and Jupiter and Rahu together, I'm seeing like crafting a public story. Then the Dasha period is going to switch from Moon, Jupiter, Rahu to Moon, Saturn, Saturn on February 2nd, so in just a few days. Now, Saturn is giving a very different vibe here in some ways, but I think Saturn is what's giving the negative experiences. Saturn is in its own sign of Aquarius in the second house. Saturn on its own as a planet represents obstacles, delays, chronic issues, anxiety, doubt, excuse me, skepticism, that sort of thing, potentially death. And Saturn is in the nakshatra of Purva, which is the front legs of a funeral pyre. So again, transformation, combustion, releasing the soul from the body, cremation essentially. Okay. Now Saturn is in its own sign, so it does have some strength, but it's in the second house. The second house represents things like family, inner circle, assets, sort of thing. So when I'm seeing Saturn in Purva here, the second house also represents oral communication. I'm seeing Saturn in Purva in Aquarius in the second house. What I'm saying is probably this person lost their family, or if not in the beginning, will lose their family at some point, especially when they run Saturn. As a sub period, like they will run in a few days if this was a person. Okay. Now, Saturn also, like medically, represents the neuromuscular junction. So when I see Saturn in Purva in the second house, this could be somebody who has delays or problems speaking developmentally. This could be somebody who has difficulties with family. Family would be of more of a conservative, potentially a like foreign immigrant family. And speech, they're not somebody who, there's like a suppression of speech here. So while they may be a prolific writer, it seems like they're not speaking very much. The other thing is that Saturn, within Purva is also the lord of the first house. So we're bringing this energy, right? We're bringing this energy of death and destruction, delays, obstacles to the first house. And so that's why I'm seeing this transformation energy of this person. Like this could be somebody who, again, has gone through a lot. Because again, since they're running Saturn, so early in life, the Saturn is going to be active for them, within a few days of them being born. This is somebody who was born into difficult circumstances because the second house also represents like early childhood, and we have Saturn influencing both the first and the second house. So the first house represents the birth circumstances as well. And Capricorn, is like a place marker and represent things like abandoned places or rundown places or poor places, kind of shabby slum type places as well. So you can see it's like this, like kind of muck or mud. Then we have this moon and Mercury, we had like that we can't see, the internal process of storytelling and victory through words and communication. But this is a communication with self. So this is somebody who's able to speak to themselves, have their internal dialogue, be positive and motivating to kind of loom up through the kind of muck or mire that they were essentially born into. Or again, if we're looking at this as a transit chart, this is each of us. There may be a lot of stuff going down right now, but how are we speaking to ourselves? How are we, coaching ourselves, through those moments so that we can kind of like a lotus flower, right? Grow up through the mud and then bloom potentially. Okay, so and yeah, so the Saturn again is affecting the person, their background. And what else we have here? So the Lugna nakshatra I mentioned briefly is Dhanashta, which is symbolized by a drum. So there's this, idea of rhythm here. But again, I would see this rhythm as being like words and thoughts and that sort of thing. The moon nakshatra Shravana, again, crafting a public story. The other thing is that the Shah sequence, excuse me, for this person is starting off in moon, and then it shifts to Mars, and then Rahu and Jupiter. Moon and Mars and Rahu, especially when somebody starts their life in those periods, Moon and Mars are like kind of unconventional planets, and Rahu as well. Moon and Mars are, I would say, more independent, and Rahu is like ambition, but there's this usually kind of unconventional twist. Um, yeah, and then Jupiter comes about. So this might be somebody who's really quite independent and also unconventional because of the plans that they run. But then the other thing, the other planet I didn't mention yet in Lugna is Ketu. Ketu is aspecting the Lugna rising sign as well. Ketu is the south node of the moon. And Ketu has this energy of being separatist and can be destructive, kind of like Mars, but with kind of more hidden, unexpected quality. And so K2 coming into the Lugna as well, that's going to bring energy and fire and kind of destructiveness, can be. And then in addition to that, we have Mars coming from the sixth house. So, and Mars is also a fiery planet, rebellious planet, action-oriented planet, that sort of thing. And the sun is there in the rising sign as well. So the three planets associated with fire are in the Lugna here. This is somebody who's going to be quite fiery, quite temperamental, also a leader of thoughts and words. Okay. So, yeah, not somebody who's. It's kind of funny, like it seems like it's kind of at odds because you have all this fire and rebelliousness energy and that sort of thing. And then it's all potentially contained by Capricorn, which is usually a fairly conservative, you know, uh, building things brick by brick type of energy. But Saturn's in Purva, so it's almost like working against convention. Yeah, so a very unconventional person. That's probably quite hard to predict, I would say. So some general sort of social context at this time on the 29th of January. This is called Mauni Amavasya. Okay, so Mauni refers to silence. So I mentioned in some of my other videos that during this time period for about a month, while Sun is in Capricorn and Jupiter is in Taurus, this is the time of the Kumbh Mela. So it's a big migratory pilgrimage to different rivers, including the Ganges. And people will go and pay homage there and dip themselves in the Ganges to, you know, hopefully assuage some of their, negative karma and that sort of thing. And in the middle of this is Mauni Amavasya, so the new moon in the middle of usually month-long process. And Mauni is a day when people do not speak. Um, and so it's interesting is that in this chart we have this Saturn in Purva in Aquarius. So there's this Aquarius is a fixed air sign, so kind of fixed ideas. So this fixed ideas of again not speaking, killing speech, you could say. So it was just interesting that it literally showed up in the chart. And again, this whole already when I'm picking up this transformational energy, because again, the dispositor, the ruling planet for the whole chart is this Saturn in Purva. There's a big turnover, there's a big shift, there's a big personal transformation that's going on here. Okay. The other thing is that 29th of January is the Chinese New Year. And I don't know hardly anything about Chinese astrology, but I was looking up a little bit. So I guess this year we're dealing with, we're going to be in the energy of the wood snake. So the snake, apparently in Chinese astrology, is about intelligence, is about intuition, is about There's a lot of mental energy associated with the snake, it seems like. It can be charming and cunning at the same time. So again, kind of like what I was saying here with this, chart is that this could be somebody who is a spin doctor, who's always like sugarcoating really negative stuff in a way that's deceptive. Or this could be somebody who's taking negative experiences and sort of, again, spinning them from lead to gold. Or like taking these negative experiences and maybe writing songs that are mega hits, and then, you know, it's there's positive, you know, um, value coming out of negative experiences. And then the wood part of the snake, or the wood energy associated with the snake, wood is like trees and plants and stuff. So transformation and growth. Wood is also associated with, like in Chinese medicine, the liver and gallbladder, which is also a very transformative energy. All right, the snake is associated with transformation because it sheds its skin. A lot of times, snakes are associated with medicine and healing. Can be, like the what is it, staff of Mercury, the caduceus, right? The snakes that wind around the staff with the wings and that sort of thing. Um, it can kind of go either way with snakes, right? I mean, they can bite and sting and hide in their cave or hole or whatever, and then kind of strike out. But there can also be this transformation energy. So it seems like even from that paradigm, there's some energy that's related to what I'm seeing in this chart so far. All right, so let's take a look at the Lugna a little bit more, and then go on to the other houses. So we have a Capricorn and Makara rising, movable earth sign. So a lot of movement here, practical movement. Okay, so this is somebody who's going to be, excuse me, practical in many ways, but sorry, but practical in transforming things. Okay, turning things over, because their ruling planet is this Saturn in Purvabhadrapada. Okay, and then as I mentioned, there's a new moon, so weak moon and sun are both in Shravana. Now, it's interesting because the sun and the moon are the two regents, kind of regal, royal planets of the zodiac. We have the king and the queen here. The moon you can't see because it's again a new moon. And sun is there, shining bright, and the sun can represent things like career, purpose, also like being like kind of master, leader. So this is a master storyteller here that we're looking at. This could literally be like a figurehead, like a world leader of some kind, who's good at again, um, spinning things. Whether it's you want to, again in political terms, usually that's seen as a negative thing, but in other ways, like songs on the radio, it's taking these negative emotions and experiences and then turning them into something beautiful, right? So it can kind of go either way. And that's the thing is we have the two dual planets, Mercury and Jupiter, in the Lugna. Their energies are there. So Mercury again is combust, and it has directional strength, so it's strong, but like in an internal way. And Uttara brings like victory there with words, communication, again internally. It seems like I would think this person is a very internal process, what's going on here. With regard to this transformation. Then we have a retrograde Jupiter aspecting here. Now Jupiter's debilitated in Capricorn. So that may not Jupiter is generally like a very compassionate planet, diplomatic planet, that sort of thing. So when I'm seeing Jupiter debilitated here, there may be some, again, the Rohini energy, the nakshatra will bring like attractiveness and that sort of thing. But the other planets are quite strong. I mean, The Saturn, that's the ruling planet, is in the funeral pyre energy. The sun, can be quite strong. Shravana is a nakshatra, is okay, but Mercury, Mercury can be, well, not Mercury, but Uttarashada, the nakshatra Mercury is in, it's a piercing energy from elephant tusk. I mean, that can be quite sharp. The other thing is K2 is an explosive energy. And Mars is also aspecting here, and Mars is in a nakshatra called Punarvasi, which is symbolized by a quiver of arrows. So again, there's this sharpness that we're getting a couple of times over, with not so much of the sugar coating energy. I think the sugar coating energy, I'm seeing is in the third house here because we have Venus and Jupiter. Those are the two great benefics there. The other thing is Venus and Jupiter will be in the fifth house of the fifth house is like a stage or a performance. So there's some sort of performing speech or, here. May not be this person necessarily, but their work is going to come to the forefront. Yeah. So, but they themselves, it looks like, they're quite, they can be quite harsh in some ways, unpredictable and fiery, in their words. And so, but maybe their writing, it looks like their writing is quite a bit different, in terms of the tenor of it, the tone of it. So then we also have a retrograde Mars, and Mars is a rebellious planet. It's a fiery planet. It's an erratic planet. And Mars, that's the other thing that's really interesting, is because we were picking up the Mercury energy twice, remember, from the day lord and the hour lord. Now, Mercury is right at the top, and it aspects in the seventh house, right, directly across from it. So the first house and seventh house are going to be active right when this, especially during this time. Mercury also owns the sixth house of enemies and daily routines, and the ninth house of authority and government and father, that sort of thing, religion. Now, the two rebellious planets, Mars is in one of them and Ketu's in the other. And the thing is, we have Mars on, again, this fiery rebellious planet on the Lugna, on Mercury, on Moon, on Gemini, the house it's in, and on Virgo, the house that Ketu's in, because they're all related to Mercury. So again, when we're picking up a lot of, so we're seeing like enemies, change of daily actions, erraticness going on here. Then the ninth house, we're having a dual but practical, sorting process of an authority. And again, and then this is all coming, filtering through potentially this person or this moment in time. Like how do we process all this? Because there's a lot coming through. How do we process all this change? How do we process all this chaos? How do we, potentially rise above it? How do we turn lead into gold? Is what I'm saying here. And there could be two different, versions of this. Like I've sort of been talking about two different versions, partly because Mercury and Jupiter are dual planets. But when you have Mars on Gemini and Virgo, and also Sagittarius in the 12th house, but Mercury as well. That's a Mercury that's being transmitted is bathing in Martian energy. So Mercury again is in Uttarashada, that piercing tusk energy. Uttarashada can be like a planet that kind of can instigate things like aggression and wars and things like that. And especially with all this Martian energy, embedded in all this, this is like a quite an aggressive, rebellious energy. So whether again it's a songwriter who's like, I went through all these negative things, but I'm still gonna like process it and then write about it and turn it into something positive, or it could be the other way. Maybe again a government who's doing some different things, and they're just like spinning it or sugarcoating it in a way to make themselves look good, even though like in reality it's a pretty harsh situation. It could go either way. The other thing is that, again, because we have this massive Saturn in its own sign in the second house, and that's again squelching speech. This could be like a leader who is suppressing speech of others. Yeah, potentially. So, and again, we have this Mauni Amavasya, so a day of like, so again, the duality here is also like, some people feel like their voice is suppressed, and other people are choosing to suppress their own voice. So it's interesting because the in some ways the actions are the same, but the motivation and intention and choice, conscious choice of doing so is different, right? Because part of the reason why people go through this Mauni Amavasya and choose not to speak is because, a lot of people say a lot of things, a lot of energy is put into words and that sort of thing, but um, how much of it is actually meaningful? How much of it is it actually useful? Or are we just like, creating more noise pollution, that sort of thing? And also, people tend not to value speech as much, right? Their words aren't as weighty. The other thing is that, and, if we're talking about karma here, everything that you think, everything that you say, everything that you do, a lot of people focus on actions when they talk about karma, but it's every thought you have. Because the thought will drive behavior, whether the behavior is speech or whether the behavior is some sort of other action. And so when we choose to remain silent, it forces us to go within, kind of like this energy here of like what let's try to transform these thoughts going on, right? The Mars and the K2 and the Sun, that's all this combustion energy, and the Saturn and the purva cremation energy. There's a lot of transformation of thoughts and words going on here. And so you could see this like literally being the Mauni Amavasya, but it could also be in a more public setting as well. And again, what's the intention we're bringing to this? Are we doing this on purpose, conscientiously, to transform ourselves for positive improvement of ourselves? Or is this like an ego-driven type of endeavor here? And it can be both, I think, potentially. So okay, so also Mars is in the Lugna, Ketu again is in the Ketu is in a nakshatra called Uttar Falguni, which is sort of interesting. Uttar Falguni is symbolized by a hammock, which is quite different energy than most of these other uh, you know nakshatra energies. Uttar Falguni symbolized by a hammock, but the other thing is it's like enjoyment, but with purpose. And so that's why, like again, I'm with the Danisht energy and the Shravana energy, I am seeing like some unexpected hidden energies to what's going on in the first house. But also there's some enjoyment related to it as well. Some beauty being brought to it through Jupiter and Rohini, some enjoyment being brought to it through Ketu. But there's also purpose. So it's not just, all fun and frivolity, that sort of thing. But there's like, um, yeah, again, I just keep thinking of songwriters who've been through a lot of, deep, dark moments in their life, and then somehow they write a beautiful song out of it. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. So can't see, and the thing is, it's also interesting. You can't see Moon, Mercury, Ketu in the first house, but you do see Sun and Mars, so the two fiery planets. So again, there's going to be leadership and energy there, and then Jupiter is going to bring some, smoothing over to some extent, even though Jupiter's debilitated in Capricorn, but Jupiter's still going to, take the edge off a bit of all these other energies. Because luckily, if Jupiter wasn't involved, this would be much more of a harsh type of situation here. Yeah. So unusual, if we put this all together, unusual, hidden, fiery, can be divisive speech, I would say, thoughts and decision, but there's also success here, victory. This could be a lot of news about a leader or authority speaking. So again, this could be some sort of, head of whatever. Sharp pointed separation. That's when we're starting to figure in that Saturnian energy. This could also be an injury or accident or surgery, frankly, because we have Mars and K2 and the Sun together, all those fiery planets. So if this was a moment in time, I could see this being some sort of accident, especially related. Like I kept thinking of choking here, with Saturn being in its own sign in the second house. That the second house represents like ears, nose, throat, and so with Saturn representing like the neuromuscular junction, this is somebody who maybe is not able to swallow or speak. And then also the Saturn is aspecting to the fourth house where it's debilitated, and the fourth house represents the lungs and the chest and the heart. So somebody who's not able to speak and also maybe not able to breathe very well in this particular moment or when they run Saturn. Yeah. Um, and then the surgery, the injury, accident, surgery could be to the face, the body, the mind. The other thing is that, well, I haven't talked about it yet, but the chidra grahas, the planets of vulnerability, those are all aspecting the lugna here. What are they? I listed them down below. Where are the chidra grahas? Okay, Mars twice. So Mars, literally when we have a chidra graha, that can indicate like a piercing point in the body, like maybe somebody's literally has a piercing, like ear piercing or something. But it can also be a place of surgery. And so we have Mars twice, that's in the lugna. We have Sun, that's in the lugna, and Jupiter, which is aspect. So this could be somebody who, had some sort of surgery, literally to the head or face, body generally, or it could be somebody with like a lot of piercings or like tattoos. Could be. Um, okay, so let's get back up to the top before I lose my track too much. Yeah. So there's again a lot of practical action, but at the same time, there's all this unconventional energy as well. There can also be an obsessive quality to this person or this moment in time because when we have K2 or Rahu, those planets on their own can represent obsession, compulsion, that sort of thing. But then when we have K2 on Moon and Mercury, that can be like a lot of like erratic, obsessive compulsive energy as well. So, yeah. The Lugnatia, which is a ruling planet against the Swa, Saturn, Purva, it's gone to the second house, which is an artistan of wealth. So even though there's a lot of internal transformation that this person is capable of, or involved with, their focus is mostly on the tangible world. Like family, like wealth, that sort of thing. Maybe because it seems like there's been a lot of loss in those areas of their life. And that's really like, a deep part of them or their experience because again, Saturn is the ruling planet for the chart. Um, so this could literally be destruction of life, family, inner circle, property, home, especially because Saturn is aspecting again the fourth house of home, where it's debilitated. At least Saturn is in its own sign in Aquarius, so that probably means this person did have a family, but there's a lot of problems there. Um, not only lack or delay of speech, but it could be food as well, because the second house represents, you know, uh, nourishment and, eating food. It could be a traditional family, a foreign family, again, difficulty swallowing, moving the mouth, literally. That might be part of why there could be problems speaking. Um, could be also hearing and sight might be affected. But there's like this forced division going on here because of the Saturn and Purva. Uh, let's see. In the Chittagraha, as I mentioned, so Mars twice, Sun, Jupiter. So Mars and Sun are also the two, leadership planets. So this person could have problems with leadership. And Jupiter could be, Mars and Jupiter together can be the law. Jupiter can represent children as well. So again, authority, fighting, law, when you put all these together in the lugna. Um, and then also the ninth house and the 12th house there as well. Um, Then we have a bunch of yogas here. The budhaditya yoga, which is an intelligence combination, like a more of a calculating math science type of intelligence. Pravraja yoga, the 3 planets on the top, so that's a life focus. Parivartana yoga, the exchange of houses between Venus and Jupiter. Veshi and Sunafa, solar lunar yogas. This is because of that massive Saturn and Purvadopata. I would say that's actually bringing the sun and the moon down because it's a natural malefic planet. So, these yogas will bring intelligence, focus, potentially counseling energy, but also probably a lack of support. So, in terms of money, the yogi is Mars, bhava yogi is Ketu, and the duplicate yogi is Saturn. So, again, this person is probably going to go through different cycles of gain and loss in terms of finances. The other thing, besides having a pravraja yoga, we also have a Sudarshan Lagna here. So a Sudarshan Lagna is when we have the moon and the sun and the rising sign all lined up, in the same sign. That also gives somebody like a lot of power, because if your sun sign and your moon sign and your rising sign are all different constellations, that can mean that like your mind is moving in one direction, has a different focus, and your sun, purpose, career, and then, your body, the rising sign. When we have the mind, body, soul lined up, that gives not just focus like the Pravraja Yoga does, but power. So, this is a very powerful moment in time or person. There's also a sadhisati going on here. So, sadhisati is when the Saturn is in the sign before, of, or after the moon. And that essentially can indicate that there's a lack of major support system of some kind. And if this is a person, they were born in a sadhisati. So again, this might be somebody who lost their family fairly early in life. Um, the other thing is sort of interesting. Within a day or two, Jupiter is going to have an exact aspect on Moon and Sun. You can see there's only about a degree and a half away from where Jupiter is shining its light. So Jupiter is going to give all of this, I think, a little bit of a lift in the next couple days. And Jupiter, even though it's in Rohini, and potentially can, uplift this moment. Jupiter can represent spirituality and faith, that sort of thing. Jupiter's got a lot going on with it. So Jupiter's karko, meaning Jupiter in the fifth house can indicate problems with fifth house issues like children, people related to the fifth house, like children and counselors. Okay, so there may not be, there's probably fairly good counseling going on, but I think there's going to be a lot of change of counselors because you have Jupiter there, which is in Rohini and retrograde, so that seems pretty good. Then you have K2 aspecting here, so that's going to give an unusual twist and again a sorting energy from some authority. And then Venus is coming into the fifth house through parivartana, and Venus is an Purva Vajrapata. So this could be like an end or death of a worldly counselor. So there's some, law or function here coming from authority where, there's a big shift or change, um, again, related to children or counselors, that sort of thing. The other thing is Jupiter is bhavat bhavam. So, yeah, a lot going with Jupiter. And Jupiter's bhavat bhavam because it's the lord of the third house and it's gone 3 houses away from the third house. So, again, this can be like one writing after another. So, like one publication. This could be a legal publication because Jupiter represents law. But again, it can also represent like speech as well. Like I could, even though I was being more like musician, like story songwriter. It could also be a journalist. Like a journalist who, is thinking a lot, has a lot of internal process about maybe some, frankly, quite devastating events. And how do you like wrap that up in a story that's going to be what people are going to want to read? You know, maybe bring some positive. spin on negative events, that kind of thing, or the public, not just like person. Um, and so yeah, there's a lot going on with Jupiter. The moon is also bhavat bhavam, and the moon is a lord of the seventh house, and it's gone 7 houses away. So it's gonna be like one relationship after another. So again, it seems like there's a lot of turning over internally, um, personally, but also with relationships, which kind of makes sense because when we transform ourselves, a lot of our relationships are going to necessarily change as well. Because the dynamic is kind of forced to change, and some people may like it, and some people may not like it because they're used to you being a certain way, and that kind of thing. Um, the other thing is that, again, most people see Jupiter as a great benefic. And it is, naturally, it's benefic. However, when we're talking about a Capricorn rising chart, Jupiter is a pure temporal malefic, meaning Jupiter owns two negative houses, the third and the 12th house. And so what's going to happen is Jupiter is going to bring third house, malefic energy and 12th house malefic energy, especially to the fifth house where it's at. So it's actually going to bring negative energy. The other thing is that Jupiter is, a chidra graha. So again, you gotta, even though Jupiter's a great benefic, in some cases like this, um, again, that may be the transformation point, right? Because we're like the 12th house is losses, and the third house is siblings, and you know, um, non-oral communication, and it might be the fifth house is the house of creativity. It's like that's where the churning, the spinning, of the negativity into something positive is happening. Yeah, so trouble with counselor children, many publications, endeavors. Because Moonbeam Bhavat Bhavam, this is not only relationships, but also potentially business endeavors, or it could be, again, writing, many writings, like there's a prolific energy in the third house. There's also this prolific energy with, endeavors. Um, and the endeavors could be different songs or like journal articles, that kind of thing. So yeah, this is a rebellious thought leader, but also like artisan, potentially musician, composer. I was also seeing potentially like instrument of some kind, and lyrics, that kind of thing. That's the vibe. There can be permutations of this, of course. Um, it's possible that this could be a lawyer, but the thing is that the fourth house, which is really being pummeled by the Saturn, where it's debilitated, that's a house of education. And so, because it's so negative here in fourth house, I think this person's gonna have a lot of problems with, going through formal education. And so, I'm not sure that they would make it to the level of, um, that many years of school, like to become a lawyer. I could also potentially see, if that fourth house wasn't so compromised, um, this could be like an ER doctor type thing, like somebody who's taking these traumatic events and turning them into something positive, sending the energy in a positive way, stitching people up, especially with all this like Mars. Mars can be surgery, and then in Punarvasi, that could be sewing, and then this could also be potentially like a trauma counselor. But again, because the education doesn't seem to be that strong, this is somebody who's probably more self-taught, more than has gone down a formal education road. That's why I think like something like a songwriter type person might be more in alignment with this kind of chart. Okay, so so the second house we've been talking about, this Swa Saturn and Sun house, so destructive speech, family, inner circle, some protection of assets, but also I would say loss of assets as well. The third house, Jupiter aspects its own through parivartana. Venus is there in Purvadra, but Rahu is there in Uttara. So this is like publishing, ambitious, unusual, constructive but objective arts. This could also be, problems with siblings and neighbors, potentially. Although there could be quite a few. Let's see. There might have been a loss of siblings, I would say. Yeah. because Venus being in Purva Drapada and then Rahu being in Uttar Drapada, those are still destructive energies. Then the fourth house lord is Mars. It's gone to the sixth house of enemies, and then we have it's aspected by a debilitated Saturn. So again, this is end of home happiness. This is not, I think, a very happy person, if it was a person or moment in time. Mother, family line, education, heart, lungs, respiration. There's a lot of trouble here with the fourth house. Fifth house, the Lord is Venus. It aspects its own, so there's some protection for Venus, but Venus is in Purva. It's still that funeral pyre energy. And we've got a retrograde Jupiter that's Karako Bhavanasha, bhavam. It's also aspected by Ketu. So there's some sort of unusually attractive but destructive counseling here, like I said, a spin doctor potentially, difficulty with children, unusual circumstances related to romance, if you want to look at that. And Rahu and Ketu are on the house as well as the dispositor of Venus, because we have Rahu on Venus and Ketu's on the house. And the thing is, I've mentioned in my other talks, when you have Rahu or Ketu with Venus, this can bring relationships where the partners are quite different from each other. Like maybe their financial status, or maybe race, or religion, or could be like LGBTQIA type stuff. Or it's just kind of like an unusual match. Like, it's not a conventional match, not like it's good or bad, but um, there can be, looks like that might be part of what's going on here as well. So yeah, unusual partnerships. So there's both like an ambition because Rahu's with Venus, but then there's this like release energy because Ketu. And this might be like somebody who potentially, yeah, it looks like they have relationship issues because Saturn is in the in the second house of family inner circle, so people close to them. Saturn's debilitated in the fourth house of home, family line. Saturn is also aspecting the eighth house of deep psychology. So that's quite a strong negative influence on somebody's mind. Um, and then Saturn's is aspecting the 11th house of clubs, groups, and societies. So yeah, I think this person has taken some hits regarding relationships. But then again, they're able to spin it in a positive direction, looks like. Um, yeah, so the sixth house, did I cover the fifth house? Yeah, sixth house, the Lord is Mercury. Mercury's gone 8 houses away, so that's not, that's long-term problems with sixth house issues, which is enemies and daily routines and stuff like that. Mars is retrograde in Punarvasu. Punarvasu, because of that quiver of arrows, the quiver on, the box that hangs on the back with arrows in it, that's like home base, and the arrows go out and come back. This could be like an enemy leaving home and returning home. And there's some daily activity where there's like commuting energy or enemies are being sent away. Mars also can represent infections and accidents, which I mentioned already with the Lugna. And then Mars is on Mercury in its houses. So there's this aggressive dual energy of thoughts and actions. And again, bringing somebody out of their comfort zone. Yeah. So, um, yeah, there's not a lot of peace, I would say. Although, again, this Venus, Jupiter, parivartana, something good is coming out of this, even though there's a lot of destructive energy in this moment of time or this person's chart. Seventh house Lord is Moon, the aspect its own that brings it strength, but the Moon is new, it's combust. So this is like something that you can't really see. Like if it's because the seventh house is like a relationship or like a spouse-like partner, or also a business endeavor. So this might be a partner that they don't see very much, or it's a business that you don't physically see, like a virtual, you know, uh, business. More of an intellectual business. And also the moon represents the public. So that could be this like songwriting or like, article writing, that this person does. It could also, this could also be a blogger. I don't know about, again, because the uh, education houses are pretty, compromised. I don't know if somebody would have a formal degree in journaling, but you can hang out your own shingle and just start blogging or podcasting or whatever. Although I don't think it would be a podcast because Saturn is, compromising the second house of oral communication. I think it would be more writing of some kind. Um, Virtual public publishing. So again, this could be again if it was songwriting. There could also be some fear mongering I could see here. Because moon, sun. Why did I put that? I think because of the I think because of the K2 and the Rahu, because Rahu is also going to be on Jupiter, and Jupiter's going to aspect here. But again, there's a lot of writing, publishing, thinking energy in terms of career, public interface that's going on here in the seventh house. Yeah. Again, this could also be like casting a leader in a positive light. You and they themselves, casting themselves in a positive light, that sort of thing. Eighth house lord is sun. Sun has gone 6 houses away. That's usually not a good sign. Because 6 houses away is a acute issues energy aspected by a swa Saturn. So unrelenting, destructive thought process of self and others. So again, it sounds probably negative just the way I wrote it, but again, if this is like a trauma counselor, if this is a songwriter, they're taking all this negative stuff they themselves or other people have experienced and then turning it into something positive. So it doesn't have to be, even though it's like pretty like woo intense, on the chart, it seems like something positive is coming out of it. Yeah. And again, maybe like is the it can be like our own intention or motivation or what are we going to do with all this? Like are we going to all this negative stuff that's going on, are we going to be victims to it? Are we going to hide out in bed? Are we going to avoid it? Or are we going to like face it and do what we can to transform the negative energies within ourselves and around us that we're seeing and redirect it into a new way, which is not, easily done. It takes a lot of inner strength, but again, this chart has that kind of strength with this. Again, with the pravraja yoga, and then we have the sudarshan on top of it. There is strength here that this can actually be done, but this is not a. I mean, when I've been through some difficult things, one of the meditations I do, it's from the Buddhist tradition. I forget the name of it. But essentially, what you're doing is you're visualizing like a person in front of you who, you feel has wronged you or whatever. And then you breathe in, like you imagine breathing in their negative energy into yourself, almost like as a black smoke. And you visualize the black smoke transmuting into like golden energy and then sending the golden energy back out towards them and then, the world or whatever. This is like a very Tonglen, that's what it's called, Tonglen meditation. This is a very intense meditation. Like not usually the one beginners want to pick up. Okay. Because it's like you really have to put your ego aside and just really focus on how do we make this better? Otherwise, I'm going to, like I was thinking, like, at a certain time, I was like, I'm going to walk around with all this negative energy and resentment and bitterness towards whoever. And I just don't want to carry that around and I don't want to transmit that. So I use that method to, do that. And again, that's a silent internal, highly, unusual, for most people would think, inner transformation. That would fit this kind of profile here with this chart, that kind of action. Yeah. And again, the Mauni Amavasya, the just staying silent for a day. That's hard to do in our world. We're always connected. So then what else do we have? Yeah. So then the ninth house lord Mercury, Virgo here. So again, there can be two different authorities. And again, if this is like suppression, through some sort of authority like a government authority, that would generally be considered probably negative by most people. Um, but there could also, this ninth house can also be a religious authority, which is like the Mauni Amavasya, where it's like, okay, we're not going to suppress you, but we're going to suggest suppressing yourself, through this like staying silent and see what kind of transformation it brings. It brings you out of your comfort zone. You're doing something radically different to transform your inner thoughts, inner dialogue, rather than just keep, like what is it they say? It's like doing the same thing over and over again and again, expecting different results is considered insanity. Yeah, so do something different to, consciously approach these issues. Yeah, so that they can hopefully you can get at the root of them and dig them up and um yeah, so K2's there, it's aspected by Mars, Jupiter, Venus. This is a pretty explosive energy, dual splitting authority, aggressive, could be aggressive legal counsel as well, but there's some enjoyment here, which may or may not be nice. This could be an authority who's just sort of, in their ego and like wielding their power, inappropriately. Um, but it could also be that there's some um, positive aspect to doing this consciously. Yeah. I mean, some people like, you could even think of it as like just taking a day off from, all your devices and your internet and all this kind of stuff, and just letting your mind settle down from taking in all this like information and trying to process it. I mean, that's a lot for the nervous system to keep up with. I mean, technology's evolved much faster than our nervous systems have, so it's amazing that we can kind of keep up with the technology, but it takes a toll. It drains people in ways they probably don't realize. The 10th house here, 10th house lord is Venus. It's gone 6 houses away again. So a lot of these house lords have gone. So that's bringing a lot of like short and long term issues. Yeah, daily action of emotional destroying relationships because nothing else is there except this lord of Venus and Purva. So it's like, again, consciously releasing people and relationships. Uh, and then 11th house lord is Mars. Mars has gone 8 houses away. That's also negative energy. It's aspected by Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. So again, destroying social circles, avoiding social circles, seems like. 12th house lord is Jupiter, aspected by Mars. This could be like foreign travel, okay, because Mars is in Punarvasu, that can be traveling energy. Also, Mars can be enemies, and the 12th house can be foreign, isolated places. So, yeah, the 12th house can also be hidden enemies, not just, obvious enemies and that sort of thing. So, again, this chart, I think, is showing us that there is this power of silence, right? I mean, hence the kind of theme for this moment, I think, to transform. But then it's sort of like, what are the choices here? There's a choice, I think, to do it consciously, willingly, and even if it's sort of being, you know, put upon you, it's like, how can we still use this time to go within, transform ourselves, to better ourselves? Because there's strength here as well, to make ourselves stronger, to make ourselves more clear, to make ourselves more, potent in many ways, rather than just fritter away all of our words. Uh, how can we use them in the most productive way? Yeah. So that's the main chart. And then let's take a look at the subcharts next. Okay, so looking at the sub-zodiacs, amshas, subdivisional charts, all different names for the same thing. These charts are essentially derived by slicing and dicing the main chart into smaller bits. And so these are mostly used for timing issues. So that's why at the top I've put the Dasha period. So again, we're starting off with Moon, Jupiter, Rahu, and then shifting to Moon, Saturn on February 2nd, 2025. And these different charts, they can give a little bit more information about different areas of somebody's life, but Again, they're mostly used for timing, and you always want to bring the energies back to the main chart. So we have the Navamsha D9 for spouse and partnerships, and then the Drake and D3 for siblings. So in the D9, all grahas are well placed. The moon is exalted, so that's pretty nice since that's the main planetary period. Jupiter's in parivartana with Mercury, and Saturn's debilitated in the ninth house, which is aspecting Mars, Jupiter, and Mercury. So yeah, so I would see that as like destructive speech or news involving social groups, family, um, and money as well, because the 11th house is money. But yeah, this Saturn, it debilitated ninth house. That's some sort of authority that's really dragging down. And again, that could be father, it could be government, could be like religion, a religious leader, that sort of thing. Really suppressing this. And that's one thing that you'll see as we go through. And I tallied that at the end, is that Saturn is really on Jupiter often in these amshas here. And again, I've mentioned in the last few like new moon, full moon videos, it's been this like parade of planets really being suppressed or affected, influenced by Saturn. And so again, Saturn will be moving out of Aquarius in about 2 months, where it's been there for almost two plus years. So I think Saturn is giving its last bit of karma in its current position. But yeah, you'll see, like, I think the first one, I don't remember well, it's been several of them, but it was like Saturn on Mercury, Saturn on Moon, Saturn on Venus. We kept seeing, a lot of it in the chart. And now we're seeing Saturn on Jupiter. So more of the same, but this Saturn's going to create a major drag um, on Mercury and Jupiter, which are the two communication planets. So yeah, Rahu, again, all the planets are well placed, but luckily Moon is pretty you know, uh, good here because it's exalted. And again, because Moon is aspecting its own house in this, excuse me, the seventh house in the main chart. That's nice. But Moon is also combust because it's new. So there might be some good thoughts going on here. Um, but again, there's also some difficulty, I would say, with not just like secular circles, social circles, because that's the 11th house, but also religious and spiritual groups, because satsang, that's spiritual groups, is the ninth house. So a lot of problems with social circles going on here for spouse. The Drake in a D3. Um, this is siblings, so all the grahas are well placed. So that's usually kind of a nice start. Saturn's exalted. That's nice. Moon is exalted. That's strong. But we have Jupiter with Ketu, and then Venus and Jupiter with Rahu. So there's kind of in Virgo, so there's kind of this dual. Jupiter and Venus are the two advisory planets, and there's Ketu and Rahu here. So there's like this unusual advice regarding relationships going on here for siblings. And again, Saturn is in the second house, very strong, similar to the native chart. And that's another thing that you'll see is how often Saturn is basically on the 2-8 axis in all these subcharts. So those are the three things to note. And again, I did tally them at the end, so you don't have to count them. But you're gonna see Saturn on Jupiter, and you're gonna see Saturn in the second or eighth house, like over and over again. So again, Saturn is suppressing Jupiter. Jupiter is things like compassion, generosity, diplomacy, goodwill, faith. All those things are going to be, influenced negatively, suppressed by Saturn. And then Saturn in the second house, so again, family, inner circle, assets, and the eighth house, deep psychology. As you can see in this Dracona here, Saturn is debilitated in the eighth house. That's a very strong negative Saturnian energy. And again, Saturn on its own without the nakshatra involvement is like delays, obstacles, skepticism, anxiety, doubts, fear. And then Saturn and the purva energy is like amplify all that, all the Saturnian qualities, in long term and also long term problems. So you can see that, in both of these charts, when we're running Moon, Jupiter, Rahu, that's a lot more of a positive vibe, even though Saturn's like, influencing Jupiter a bit. But once we switch to Moon, Saturn, Saturn, it's like s- all that Jupiterian energy is really not just dimmed, but like almost eliminated. And a lot more negativity is produced. Yeah, a lot more destructive energy is produced. Even though, again, these planets are on, positive houses, that's better than them being in negative houses for sure. But this is not without issue. Okay. So, and then Saturn is on 2, 4, 8, and 11 again. So obstacles with relationships. If you watch my video on Kuja Dosha, Mangalic Yoga, where I was talking about the blemish of Mars. The blemish of Mars happens when you have Mars in the first, second, fourth, seventh. I count them all. Eighth or 12th house. One, two, three, four, five, six. Yeah, those houses. Um, because those houses are related to relationships. And so what you're seeing here is it's almost like instead of a kuja means Mars, dosha is like imbalance, it's almost like a shani dosha. I mean, for better or worse, like because Saturn is in all these relationship houses. A lot of destruction, death, turning over of relationships, difficulties, obstacles. Okay, so in this chart, Mars is on sixth house, is the ninth house, 12th house, first house. So again, explosive speech and writing, because Mars is kind of in the similar position to its natal position. It's just in a different it's in the sixth house, but it's in Aquarius instead of, what was it, in Gemini. But what's interesting is Gemini and Aquarius are both air signs, so a lot of destructive thoughts going on here. But also speech and writing, yeah. So, because Mars on Jupiter can be, Mars, Jupiter, K2, this is very explosive, angry speech potentially. So this could be the siblings, protesting or really speaking up harshly about things. Let's see, the next two charts, we have the Saptamsha D7 for children and Dwadashamsha D12 for parents, grandparents. So Jupiter, Saturn not well placed in the D7, and we know that there were going to be issues with children because Jupiter's karako, bhava, nashaya in the fifth house in the natal chart. So look, Saturn again on the 2-8 axis, Saturn in the eighth house of deep psychology. That is, the Saturnian period is going to be quite dark, I would say. Moon is with a debilitated sun. Whenever you have a planet with a debilitated planet in the Amshas, that's not great. And then you have Rahu as well. So there is this like drive towards socializing, I think, regarding children, but you have these issues here. Let's see, Saturn's debilitated with a SWA K2 in the fifth house. This is a very destructive mindset, like really bad advice potentially. And you have the moon on Rahu K2 axis. That could be like, frankly, mental health issues. Depression with Saturn in the eighth house, and then obsessive compulsive energy. Going on here on the 5-11 axis. So yeah, a lot of difficulties going on with children, which isn't too surprising because even though, again, Jupiter and Venus are the two great benefics, and they were both in the fifth house, and Venus was the dispositor. Venus again is in Purva, the destructive energy. And then K2 was, aspecting from the ninth house. So we have K2 here again. But now we have Saturn debilitate with K2. I mean, that alone is like pretty destructive here. Yeah. So yeah, Saturn period is not going to be great with the kids. Dwadashamsha D11 or D12 for parents and grandparents. Rahu's not well placed. Moon is Swa. So, Moon keeps giving a little bit of energy here. That's kind of positive energy or strength, even though it's combust. people might be really feeling it, even if they're not showing it. Then we have Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu, Ketu on the 2-8 axis again. So Saturn in the second house on the relationships relationship houses 4, 8, 11. So you can see when Jupiter is running now, because Moon, Jupiter, Rahu, Jupiter is going to be shining its energy, like it's aspecting into its own sign in the 6th house. That's going to really bring up the 6th house of enemies and daily routines. It's aspecting into the 10th house where it's exalted in daily activities. But then once Saturn is shifts to Saturn, you can see it's like that's all going to shut down pretty much. And Saturn is still with Jupiter again. See, Saturn's with Jupiter again. So there's going to be a big shift. So I think what this means is, part of what this means is, because Jupiter is the great benefic, compassion, diplomacy, or whatever. It's like whatever, if there is some spin doctoring stuff going on, it's like the sugar coating's going away. It's going to bear its teeth, the reality of what's going on. Because again, there were some harsh realities going on in the main chart. Okay, it's just I think there's some attempt at diplomacy or euphemism or spin doctoring or whatever, but the deep underbelly is that a lot of difficult dark stuff has gone on, and as much as we it's almost like when they talk about spiritual bypassing or psychological bypassing, where it's like you just try to Pollyanna everything, like, oh, I can do that. I know I can do it. And sometimes I think that gets me in trouble where I was like, well, there's always a good point to this, and there's always a good. Sometimes like, you know what, this is just a big pile of crap. Like that's the honest truth, at least of the feeling. But then it's like once we like really let that sink in and we digest, we process that, and it's like, okay, this isn't fun, this isn't great, this isn't, desirable. But then it's like, okay, take a breath, and then how can we start to move things forward in a better direction? Okay. So with parents and grandparents especially, um, there could be a lot of like, oh, it's not so bad, look on the bright side type energy, while this Moon, Jupiter, Rahu periods are going on. But then when Saturn comes around, I think their tone, they're going to be talking a different talk here. Because Saturn's now more active and influential for the parents, grandparents, yeah. So then we have here education and career. So the Saddam D24 at the top for education. Moon is not well placed, but it is Swa, so there can be some positive, there can be some improvement over time. Rahu's debilitated. Um, no, sorry, Rahu's exalted. I need to change that. Rahu's exalted. And then Saturn is aspecting Jupiter again. So is aspecting Jupiter. Jupiter is a education planet. The other thing is Mercury is the other education planet. That's in the 12th house of losses and expenditures. Saturn is Swa in the Lugna. So this might be that somebody's interested in history, and they might be because the natal chart Saturn, Swa, and Aquarius in the second house, even though that might indicate like loss or destruction of family and resources, there's also some benefit to be derived from it. So again, like if it was a songwriter who's experienced all these, traumatic events, but then can write a hit song and become famous and rich because of it, like it wasn't everything wasn't all lost, The only thing though is that since this person is starting off in the moon dasha, Saturn is late in life, and so not everybody's going to want to start a new educational program in their 50s or so. So even though Saturn is strong, um, it's not usually aligned with the time people would most likely be involved in education, like a formal education program. But maybe late in life, this person gets like a degree in something. Although again, if their Saturn is that, even though their Saturn is active here, it's gonna be debilitated in the 4th house. In the main chart. Yeah. So then the Dishamshaditen for career. Rahu's not well placed. There's a Saraswati yoga here, so there's creativity, education, artistic energy, Venus aspects its own. That's another indication that this could be either practical counselor or an artist. And then the second house, so we have Jupiter in K2, and then aspected by Saturn. So Saturn's in the second house again, and also on the Jupiter again. And Mars is also on here. So Jupiter is gonna again try to keep it together, and bring some positive energy here. Then when we switch to Saturn, we're gonna have Saturn K2 Mars. I mean, three malefics in the second house of again, you know, bringing harsh foreign speech potentially. This could also be like foreign languages. Like it could be that the person is, you know, maybe the reason why they're not speaking much is because they speak a foreign language. That's also possible. Yeah. Um, but yeah, you can see there's like a big shift when we go from Moon, Jupiter, Rahu to Moon, Saturn, Saturn. Let's see what else. Okay, then if we look at wealth amshas, we've got the Rudamsha D11 for income at the top and the Chatra Chamsha D4 for assets down below. So at the top, Rahu's not well placed, but it is Swa, so that brings some strength. The moon's debilitated. It's not great. Jupiter is aspected by Suspasra of Venus, and it's on a Shubh Sankhya Yoga. So Jupiter's going to be quite strong. Moon's okay, at least in some positive house. Rahu's not bad, but Rahu Swa in the eighth house can bring other people's money because the eighth house is other people's, like maybe an inheritance or something like that. But then again, once we switch to Saturn, Saturn's in the second house again, bringing, the second house of assets down and the 11th house of income down, as well as the fourth house of happiness, home, mother, and then, deep psychology. And again, there could be like an obsessive component here because K2 Rahu Mercury with the Swa Rahu and then Saturn aspecting there, Saturn aspects its own sign. This is a very strong eighth house, but I would say a lot of maybe even addictive energy here, obsessive energy here, I would say. But yeah, things are definitely going to shift, I'd say, more for the negative once Saturn comes around, that period comes around. And Chatratamsha D4 assets, Rahu's not well placed again. Rahu not being well placed, it's not too worrisome because Rahu's the shortest, like, sub period here. But still, in this moment, it might be a blip or, a significant blip. Rahu's not well placed, but it's with an exalted Disposer. It's with an exalted Venus and Jupiter aspects in here as well. That's going to bring up this, Rahu quite a bit. Jupiter is very helpful, but again, we have Jupiter and Saturn in the second house. So it's like going from green light to red light, you know. And Jupiter is again aspecting into the sixth house, where it's going to bring up the sixth house of enemies and daily activities. Jupiter is exalted in the 10th house, um, or it's like daily activity. So there's going to be a lot of positivity, more positivity going on here. Although, again, you have to remember that Jupiter's still a chidra graha. It can still bring issues, problems. And then the other thing is, yeah, Jupiter's still a pure temporal malefic for a Capricorn rising chart. So Jupiter's not always, so I don't know, perfect or it's an idealistic planet, but it doesn't always play out that way, depending on, how it shows up in somebody's chart. So again, Jupiter, which is kind of which is like, I don't know, sort of hard, because that's the thing is, if you weren't looking at the Chittagrahas or if you weren't looking at Jupiter, the pure temporal malefic, you might think, oh, when somebody runs their Jupiter period, everything's going to take off and it's all going to be great. And you're not seeing that Jupiter's a karako bhava nashaya. You might think, oh, yeah, they're going to have kids and money and fame and you're going to be on the stage and all. But there's going to be issues, a lot of issues that come during the Jupiter period. Also, the dispositor where Jupiter is that Venus and Purva Bhadrapada. There's a drain, and Venus is in a negative house with a malefic planet, Rahu. Yeah, so unfortunately in this chart, Jupiter can't give as much as it could give. Anyway, so let's see. Rudamshadi 11 income. Yeah, so Saturn is going to be worse than Jupiter, period. Chatrachamshadi 4. So again, there's a contrasting influence of Jupiter and Saturn is on Jupiter again, and Saturn's on Jupiter in both of these charts. So again, even when Jupiter is running, there's still going to be a slowing down or delays or obstacles of what Jupiter could potentially give to somebody. And the D4, is in a place. Jupiter's uplifting. Jupiter and Saturn again. Okay, and there's two parivartana. There's Jupiter's Mars, and there's a K2 Mercury here. So what I'm seeing here is that there's both tangible assets as well as intellectual assets, maybe foreign assets as well. So yeah, especially because Saturn, probably because this person got burned early on, lost a lot early on. I think they're very concerned about tangible security. What I'm saying here. Then we have health issues. At the top, we have Tajik Shashtamsha D6 for acute issues, then Tajik Ashtamamsha D8 for chronic issues, the Bamsha D27 for strength resilience. In the top, Moon and Jupiter not well placed, and Jupiter is debilitated. So Jupiter's really not giving a lot. So this could be like a time for retreat, maybe even hospital or jail, frankly, because you could see like some, serious stuff was going on, like violence or like accidents. It was kind of interesting while I was going through this. Um, my dog was like choking, and I was like, "Oh, wow, that kind of fits the chart." So I had to do like Heimlich on my little dog. So I had like an emergency accident thing going on with my dog, and he couldn't speak and he couldn't breathe. So I was like, "Oh, wow, okay, there you go." So anyway, Moon and Jupiter not well placed. Jupiter's debilitated. Okay, Saturn is on Jupiter again because there's parivartana with Sun and Saturn. Um, Saturn is on the Lugna. That'll make it strong. Rahu's exalted. That'll make it strong. So there are issues here, but it does seem like there's endurance. More so when Saturn comes around. Like it's almost like they kind of get into like fighting mode or survival mode or something like that, where they can like power up or power down or whatever power in whatever direction they need to make it through. Because that's what because you do have this kind of survivor energy going on. Who's somebody who's taken a lot of hits, in their life, and that can make them more resilient. Like I think they even have somebody. I think I remember way back in medical school they were talking about like people who've been like served in the military or something like that, like who've been through really harsh circumstances. When you shine a light in somebody's eye, most people their iris will constrict. And sometimes what will happen is that you can see the iris sort of wavering a bit. It's kind of shaking a bit. Like it can't really shut down, sort of. It kind of wavers a bit. That's an indication that somebody has adrenal fatigue. Um, and the thing is, like, when we were shining lights in everybody's eyes in medical school, like most people had that because, medical school, the schedule and everything can be stressful and like run people down. But I remember shining a light into one guy's eyes, and he used to be in the military, and his eyes just, his iris just closed. It's like, "Doop, okay." And again, that was a sign potentially that because of the harsh experience he had already lived through, like medical school was just like a walk in the park because he had already been through so much stuff. So it was like, yeah, no, whatever, it's rolled off his back. He just kind of did it, and he and I would actually kind of joke in the back of the room, and other people get up kind of ticked off at us because they're like, "Why aren't you stressed out like the rest of us?" So like, we're here for 4 years. We're trying to enjoy the time that we have here. So, but anyway, so let's see, Saturn's on Jupiter again. Yeah, so I'm seeing like, especially with the Saturn period, endurance, relations, leadership through hardship is coming up. So, yeah, that was a little bit surprising, but good. Um, Then the Tajik Ashtamamsha, Rahu's not well placed. Mars and Jupiter in parivartana. Saturn's on Moon and Jupiter again. So I think over time, though, like it looks like in the short term, somebody can keep this up, like this kind of iron wall within themselves up and kind of power through things. But I think over time, um, there will be drains and strains on this person. Then the Bombshell D27, Jupiter's not well placed. This could be legal troubles because it's with Mars in the sixth house. There's two parivartanas here. There's Mercury, Saturn, and Mercury, Rahu. And Saturn and Rahu and Mercury are all in the second house here. So this harsh, unconventional speech, writing, thoughts. And then you're going to have Saturn, Rahu, Mercury in the 10th house here, daily activities. That's a lot of fighting. That's a lot of unusual and harsh speech writing. Somebody's basically fighting with their words here, essentially, is what's going on. And again, I'm seeing the Saturn period, it's like they get into survival mode and they just start wailing, doing what they do, and they're able to power through. So, um, yeah, even though there's some drain and strain for sure, they I guess their early experiences, negative experiences have really, strengthened them in some ways. And again, they have a Sudarshan Lagna. That's not to be overlooked. So that'll give them power. So what else do we have? Then the last two here, spirituality and worship. The Panchamsha D5 for innate spirituality, and then the Vimshamsha D20 for formal worship. So at the top, all grahas are well placed. Saturn and Mercury are in parivartana. This could be more of like a distant calculated type of thing. This could be like meditation, mantra, isolation, kind of going off the grid a bit is what I'm seeing here. Saturn again is on the second house. Saturn again is on Jupiter. Very Saturnian person here. Like, because Saturn is on Jupiter so much, it's almost like somebody who would be, what do they say, cautiously optimistic. They don't take it for granted, I don't think. And then Vishamsha D20 for formal worship. Saturn's not well placed. It's in the eighth house again. Negative mindset. It's on Mercury. We have a Mars, Rahu, Parivartana. That's going to bring a lot of rebellious energy. Saturn's on the second house. Sun's aspecting its own. This person might, in their own way, be a leader in some sort of spiritual organization, something that's international or unconventional, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, I think they're more of a leader than a follower as far as like any kind of formal worship kind of thing going on. And then I did do the tally here. So Saturn on the second house, 11 out of 14 charts. That's a lot. That's a lot of suppression, person who's more about action, I think, than words. And Saturn on the fourth house, that happens a lot. 7 out of 14, half of the charts had that. Saturn on the eighth house, 8 out of 14, most of the charts had that. Deep psychology, Saturnian. Saturn on the 11th house, 10 out of 14, quite a bit of destruction and, kind of antisocial behavior. Saturn on Jupiter, most of them again, 9 out of 14. So, yeah, again, a strength that's come at a cost, but the ability, it seems, to potentially transform things. Again, not the most, I would say, external or socially involved person, probably more internal, less optimistic, but quite powerful in their ability to transform negative energy, negative experiences into something positive, potentially. Um, but again, I think it would depend, at least the Jupiterian period, there's potentially more of that. But I would think that when they go through their Saturn period, that could be quite dark. Um, because again, it's so destructive, and also it's aspecting their eighth house of deep psychology. So, yeah, not an easy moment. Again, if we're talking about transits here, not an easy moment, but again, I think some potential offering of a different perspective on how to approach the difficult ones. Yeah. Okay. So, as always, thanks for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. I appreciate all of your support with my work and the channel. So, everybody who's liking videos and commenting and sharing videos and sending in donations, subscribing to the channel, all of it's really great. So, thank you all for that. Again, all my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology and then my concepts playlist that can be found there. For more famous charts, I would look at my birth chart archive list 2024 video for now until I come up with the 2025 list video. I do offer individual birth chart readings. You can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com for more info. I do those live on Zoom, on Skype as recorded video, and then I offer gift certificates if you'd like to offer one to somebody else. And I do have another YouTube channel on natural medicine where I talk about Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, yoga, homeopathy, and naturopathic medicine. And the name of that channel is Nature Source Care, so that's out there too. So, as always, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you found this talk useful, interesting, and helpful to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right, so until the next one, take good care. Namaste.